Mars in Leo definitely seems like a good deal, but there is one little wrinkle in it. So if you've been watching any of these videos about planets and signs, I'm sure you're right off the bat gonna know where I'm going first with this. Where I'm going first with this is right to the root symbolism of Mars and the root symbolism of Leo, and the fact that they both represent masculinity. And this is the good thing about Mars and Leo, is that the planet of masculinity is in a very super masculine sign. So you're gonna have synergy on masculinity, and that's gonna produce good results in masculine ways. However, there's one little wrinkle in the relationship between Mars and Leo. Is that Mars is not just the masculine planet, it's the youthfully masculine planet. And Leo is not just the masculine sign, it's the mature masculine sign. So tucked in underneath this masculine synergy, there's actually a disharmony between youthful attitude versus mature attitude. So to expand on both of these things, I'll point out three specific synergies going on deeper down in the symbolic trees. So the first thing to point out to illustrate the major effect of the masculine planet being in the masculine sign is the fact that this masculine planet Mars therefore represents individuality, and the masculine sign Leo represents self-sufficiency. So you get a big harmony here. And what you therefore expect, and what we commonly interpret a basic interpretation from Mars and Leo, is you have a person that's quite self-sufficient and individualistic. So in other words, they'll be self-motivating. They won't need other people to boss them around or tell them what to do. They're telling themselves what to do. They're directing and motivating themselves. They're self-determining, therefore. So they like to be in control of their lives, and they like to be in control of their destiny and their outcomes. They don't like to relinquish control to others. They are self-defining, so they become individualistic and somewhat independent from others. They don't rely on other people to inform them who they are. They define themselves. Because of these three traits, you'll also find that they tend to be the people who push envelopes in society. They push envelopes, and because they defy norms, because they're not really dependent upon the ratification from the group that comes by following the norms. So these people will come across as being kind of free-spirited and unsettled, or hard to pin down, hard to nail down, hard to tie down. The second synergy that relates to the masculinity of the planet and the sign is the fact that Mars is strength. Mars represents strength, and Leo represents power. In a native who has Mars in Leo, you expect them to have a lot of power and strength, so they're a natural leader type. So Mars in Leo is a good candidate for a management position. They tend to function well as a manager or a boss. It's also a good candidate for a politician. They tend to function well as the leader of the town, or the leader of the village, or the leader of the country, the person who gives the orders. Even if it's a smaller scenario, or the leader of a team. Now, the third thing to point out has to do with the wrinkle about Mars in Leo. Most of Mars in Leo is great because it's all about masculinity, synergizing with masculinity, but there's a wrinkle in youthfulness from the planet clashing with maturity of the sign. So the way that this really comes out, can be verbalized symbolically, is Mars is the planet of inception. This is the youthful part of the masculinity. Inceptiveness, it wants to get things started, wants to go, wants to begin, ambitious. Whereas Leo is actually the planet of stability, which is the mature form of masculinity. It provides stability by giving a perimeter of protection. So you have a clash between Leo representing stability and Mars representing inceptivity, which means setting something off balance to get it started, to catalyze it. And the result of this little wrinkle, or this dissonance between Mars and Leo, is that natives with Mars in Leo, they tend to be impatient. And it will become more or less obvious depending on how the rest of the chart is, and especially depending on what else is going on with that Mars. What's aspecting it, what it's conjoining it, what's the lord of, etc. But basically, in the toolkit of Mars and Leo is this potential to be quite impatient. You could say they're rash, or they're hasty, or they tend to rush things. They don't like to wait around, so sometimes they don't take preparations. Now here's a list of interesting people with Mars and Leo. There are a lot of famous politicians with Mars and Leo, especially very recently famous politicians. So take a look at this list. Donald Trump, Mike Pence, the whole team had it. Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump's opponent the first time. Kamala Harris, one of his opponents the second time. John McCain. Then going back a little bit, Thomas Jefferson. Emmanuel Macron and Jean-Luc Mélenchon. I don't know if I said those right. These are French politicians, current French politicians. Then you get Heinrich Himmler, the Nazi, the commander of the Nazi army or whatever, and Jim Jones, the cult leader. I will look at these charts in more detail in a second, and particularly, in this case, I want to look at Himmler and Jim Jones to see why they're so evil, villainous type in comparison to the rest, which are more ordinary politician types. Donald Trump, however, is a really good example of Mars in Leo, because he's got Mars really dominating in his chart. It's very tight on his ascendant. So you really find self-motivating, self-determining, self-defining, pushing envelopes, defying norms, free, unsettled, unable to pin down, doing whatever he wants, natural leader, good in management, good in politics, leader of the team, and impatient, hasty, rushing. So Donald Trump really is like a walking picture of Mars and Leo, because he's not just a person with Mars and Leo. He's got Mars and Leo literally on his ascendant. But we've looked at his chart a billion times. I would rather look at Himmler and Jim Jones today. The next group of people I have are entertainers. So Beyonce, Amy Winehouse, Cher, Megan Thee Stallion, Sophia Loren are the females. Interesting females with Mars in a very masculine place. So it's Amy Winehouse and Cher, they look alike as well. I wonder what else is going on with their charts. They're kind of gritty. Megan Thee Stallion, Beyonce, independent woman. You know, they have that. They have the masculine stuff going on as well. It gives them a lot of strength and force and assertiveness. Then for the males on this list, these are very, very, very iconically attractive males. George Clooney, Robert Redford, James Dean, Harrison Ford, and Frank Sinatra. So what I want to do here is, because personally I get really irritated by Frank Sinatra. I can't even say his name without feeling irritated. I don't know what it is about him. But I like George Clooney and I like Harrison Ford. So what I want to do is try to find out why. So we'll take a look at the three of those charts and compare them. Another group of names on this list are athletes. There's a few important athletes that popped up. Serena Williams, Michael Jordan, Dennis Rodman. And then there's Eckhart Tolle, a philosopher who kind of breaks the mold of everybody else. Maybe Thomas Jefferson is a bit of a philosopher as well. Maybe Jim Jones a bit as well. I would have looked at Eckhart Tolle's chart. However, there's no birth time now. So we'll have to skip that one. The only thing that I would say about his chart is he's got a very good thing going on with both his moon and his Jupiter and their relationship to each other. And so his chart is not really focusing on Mars and Leo. Mars and Leo is a subtext. It's more about his Jupiter in Taurus and his moon in Taurus and his Jupiter in Sagittarius, and how they're configured with each other, and probably his time of birth is, I would say, probably giving a lot of influence to the moon, but maybe it would be giving a lot of influence to Jupiter. One of those two is really dominating. That's why he's on this list, but he's not quite like the rest of them. So, taking a look at Himmler and Jim Jones, their charts are very similar, and what makes them more of the evil version of this, they both have Saturn ascendants, for one thing. Saturn ruled ascendants. They both have Aries moon. So not only do they have Mars in Leo, but they have moon in Aries. So they're getting really, really masculinized. And moon in Aries is not really as much of a synergistic thing as Mars is in Leo. They also both have a node on the midheaven. Midheaven is the 10th house cusp, not by the whole house system, by the dynamic system. So it's an important angle in the sky, which gives planets prominence. And both of these guys, Himmler and Jim Jones, they have this weird effect, or this extreme effect to them, by having Ketu or Rahu conjoin their midheaven. In Jim Jones' case, it's actually the moon in Aries is actually also affecting that midheaven very strongly. So that is explaining why they have this like really malefic stuff and really martial stuff going on compared to the rest of them. With Himmler, there's even some other stuff that's pretty remarkable. Himmler has 4 out of 7 planets at 0 degrees. So there's a lot of planets in Sandhi. And that includes having his moon in Gandanta, the Aries Gandanta, which is the deepest Gandanta. And he also has Rahu Ketu in Gandanta. Even though it's a little bit Rahu Ketu, even the planets that are off of 0 degrees, they're slightly off of 0 degrees, except for, I think, the sun. So he's a real interesting, unusual chart. So it's not really that Mars in Leo is going to make you Heinrich Himmler. You understand? But Mars in Leo is giving the effects that are noted on the left of the screen, which could wind up in you being a Heinrich Himmler, but it's not necessarily going to be utilized that way by the rest of the chart. All right, now as for Frank Sinatra and how he compares with George Clooney and Harrison Ford, George Clooney has a Pisces ascendant. So that's already setting a nice counterbalance to Mars and Leo. He's got a Pisces ascendant, which is both female, Jupiterian, and watery. So that's really giving balance or sophistication to what Mars and Leo is bringing in. So since he has a Pisces ascendant, another thing that makes this good for Mars and Leo is Leo becomes the 6th house. And Mars is great in the 6th house. Additionally, with George Clooney is, not only does he have this nice non-Mars and Leo-ish ascendant, he's got the 1st Lord in the 12th house with the 12th Lord. So what George Clooney really has going for him is, what any great person really has going for him is a nice balance of things. He's got strong masculinity, but it's not just masculinity. It's a sophisticated, complex masculinity that's coexisting with the more subtle and feminine things about 12th house, Pisces, and so on. As for Harrison Ford, he has a Libra ascendant, and that will put his Mars in the 11th house when it's in Leo, right? So he's getting entertainment. The 11th is also a good spot for Mars because it's Upachai. Now, he's got his 1st Lord in the 9th house with the 9th Lord. So Clooney had the 1st Lord in the 12th house with the 12th Lord, and Harrison Ford has the 1st Lord in the 9th house with the 9th Lord. So Harrison Ford is getting kind of a moral feeling to him, or like a good guy. He feels like he's basically a good person because his 1st Lord is Venus in Gemini, the 9th house, with the 9th Lord Mercury. Harrison Ford's midheaven is very interesting. It's flanked by exalted Jupiter and domicile Mercury. It's right in between domicile Mercury and an exalted Jupiter. So the flavor of Harrison Ford is really, again, Jupiter, Mercury, ninth house, which are all things that I like. And then Mars in Leo is giving him his toughness and his manliness, which is fine in that context of those other things that I like. He also happens to have a Cancer sun and moon. So it's doing the same thing. It's giving some complexity and offset to the Mars and Leo. Whereas with Frank Sinatra, let's see. Frank Sinatra, well, like Harrison Ford, he's got a Libra ascendant. So that's also going to mean Mars is 11th. And that also means it's a pretty good place for Mars because it's Upachaya. His first lord is in the 4th house, aspected by the 4th lord. But his 4th house is Capricorn. And it's aspected from the 4th lord from Cancer, which means it's aspected by Saturn from Cancer. So he's got Venus in Capricorn coming out with an aspect from Saturn in Cancer. It's got this toughness in a way that I feel is not welcome. And what else is very interesting about him, if you compare his midhaven with Harrison Ford. Like, I think you can't really compare Frank Sinatra with George Clooney, because George Clooney's got a Pisces ascendant with the 1st lord in the 12th house and the 12th lord. And can you compare him with Harrison Ford because they both have a Libra ascendant? Not really, because Harrison Ford's midhaven is flanked by exalted Jupiter and a domicile Mercury, whereas Frank Sinatra's midhaven is flanked by the 2 malefics. It's flanked by Mars and Leo on one side and Saturn and Cancer on the other side. So he's coming across as more of a tough guy. So now you'll know that why I don't like Frank Sinatra. My grandma will be sad. Well, anyway, I hope that you enjoyed understanding more about Mars and Leo, specifically in the first half of the video, and then how Mars and Leo plays out in different people's charts in different ways, which is what we looked at in the second half of the video. Thanks so much. Now, what we do in these videos with the planets and the signs is I show you a consistent technique that you can use for any planet and any sign. And the technique is very simple. You look for where the planet symbolizes something that's very, very similar to what the sign symbolizes. And once you find that, you assess whether or not the planet and the sign are harmonious about that thing or whether they're antithetical about that thing. The dissonant resonance reveals what's complex or difficult for the native. The harmonious resonance, on the other hand, indicates what's easy, what comes natural, what's an inherent strength for the native. What I'm teaching you really is the method of how to do astrological interpretation by going down into the engine of the symbolism and comparing the parts. The actual interpretation that you should give is going to be individualized per the individual chart. So if you have person A with the moon in Scorpio and person B with the moon in Scorpio, it's not going to be exactly the same interpretation. Because person B's moon might have an aspect from something and person A's moon doesn't, etc., 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 etc. But what I'm showing you in the videos is the backbone of what a planet and a sign symbolizes. And once you understand that backbone, you modify it based on the circumstances, the extraneous circumstances that are affecting an individual chart. So I hope you really like this system, not just this one video, but all the videos that we do on the planets and the signs. We'll do them all. And I hope you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of those. And I hope to see you around soon. Thank you.